My daughter's name was sitting beside the chair when my mother yanked it away from her. Ellie hit the floor, and Mom moved the chair beside the grandchildren she called real. I didn't argue. I looked her in the eye and said, "You have 24 hours. Then my father went pale and asked about the original lease. That was when I knew the chair wasn't the real secret. The chair legs scraped hard across the hardwood before I understood what was happening. Ellie was already bending her knees to sit when Mom grabbed the backrest with both hands and yanked it away. My daughter dropped straight to the floor. One palm slid across the wood. Her right knee struck first. The tablecloth jumped when her fingers caught the edge, and forks rattled against china plates. Someone laughed. Then another person did. It was not a warm laugh. It was the kind people make when something cruel happens and they are too uncomfortable to be the first one to object. Mom dragged the chair toward Connor and Ava. "That seat is for my real grandkids." The room went still. Ellie looked up at me. Her face had gone pale. "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought that was my seat." That sentence hurt more than the fall. I knelt beside her and forced myself to move in order. I checked the back of her head. I checked both wrists. I asked if she felt dizzy. I asked if her vision was blurry. Then I helped her stand. Only after I knew she could put weight on her leg did I look at my mother. The place card with Ellie's name was still sitting beside the chair Mom had pulled away. I took out my phone. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was not. I opened the message thread with Natalie, my attorney, and typed one word: proceed. Then I looked straight at Mom. "You have 24 hours. Her expression changed. "For what?" My phone rang before I answered. "Natalie." The call had been arranged earlier that day. I put it on speaker because one arm was still around Ellie. Natalie's voice was calm. "If they refuse the voluntary surrender agreement, do you want me to send the termination notice tomorrow?" No one at the table moved. Mom stared at me as if I had become a stranger. Dad went pale. For 1 second, I thought he was finally looking at Ellie. He was not. He looked at me and asked, "Has the district seen the original lease?" That was the moment I knew. Dad knew there was something to be afraid of. He had just watched his granddaughter hit the floor, and the first thing he wanted to protect was not her. It was a document. I used to think the moments that changed a family had to be loud: a slammed door, a screaming match, a confession nobody could take back. Sometimes they begin with something smaller: the scrape of a chair across a hardwood floor. What happened that Christmas night did not begin with Ellie's fall. The fall only made me stop postponing a decision I had already been afraid to make. 13 days earlier, I still believed my biggest problem was convincing my daughter that Grandma would finally make room for her at the Christmas table. 13 days earlier, Ellie and I were sitting at our kitchen table with red cardstock, a gold marker, and enough glitter to follow us into the new year. The kitchen light was warm. Christmas music played quietly from the speaker near the sink. Ellie had decided that everyone at Grandma's dinner needed a handmade place card. She took hers seriously. Grandma's card had 3 careful holly leaves in the corner and a thin gold border that took her almost 10 minutes to finish. "Grandma likes these, right?" "She does." Ellie smiled and reached for another blank card. Then her hand stopped. "Should I make mine now, or wait until Grandma decides where I'm sitting?" I looked up. "There'll be room for you." She gave me a small smile. I knew that smile. It was the one she used when she thought an adult needed reassurance more than she did. She wrote her own name in plain black ink. No holly leaves. For years, I had found gentle explanations for things I did not want to name. When Mom called Ellie too sensitive, I told myself she was old-fashioned. When Mom used Connor and Ava in her school board campaign photo and left Ellie out, I told myself it made sense because they attended schools in that district. When Ellie's drawings disappeared from the mantel while Connor's soccer pictures and Ava's school portraits stayed up, I told myself, Mom probably rotated things. When Mom talked about traditional families and stable households, I told myself she belonged to another generation. I was not blind. That was harder to admit. I saw the signs. I just kept giving them kinder names. Children usually learn where they stand in a family long before anyone explains it to them. They notice who sits beside grandma, whose picture stays on the mantel, who gets introduced first, who has to ask before taking an empty chair. Ellie had been learning those things for years. I had been asking her to be patient while she learned them. Grandma just needs time, I said. Ellie capped the marker. Mom, Grandma's had 9 years. I had no answer for that. The doorbell rang before I could find one. Our mail carrier stood outside holding a certified envelope. The return address belonged to Brookfield School District. I signed for it and brought it inside. Less than an hour later, a secure email arrived. The district wanted 3 things confirmed. Did I own Cedar Ridge Cottage? Had I authorized my sister Jennifer and her 2 children to live there? And was the signature on the attached owner authorization mine? I opened the PDF. My name was there. So was my signature. It looked familiar enough to make my stomach tighten, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had never signed that document. At that point, I did not know who had put my signature there, but I knew exactly who was benefiting from it. I read the document 3 times. According to the paperwork, Jennifer was renting 2 bedrooms at Cedar Ridge Cottage for herself, Connor, and Ava. That was not true. My sister lived with Matt and the kids in Ashford Township. I had been to their house. I knew where the children slept, where they kept their bicycles, and where Ava complained the upstairs bathroom never got warm enough in winter. Cedar Ridge was not their home. I called Dad. I had not told him there was an attachment. I had not mentioned a lease, an authorization form, or my signature. I only said Brookfield School District had contacted me about the property. There was a pause. Then Dad asked, "What exactly did they send you?" I stopped walking. That question told me more than an explanation would have. Did you know there were documents using my name? He sighed. He said the children were doing well in Brookfield, and correcting anything right before Christmas could create unnecessary problems. I asked again, "Did I authorize Jennifer to live there?" He never gave me a yes or no. Instead, his voice softened into that familiar, patient tone he used whenever he wanted me to feel unreasonable. "Talk to your mother before you tear this family apart." When the call ended, I wanted to call Mom immediately. For years, that was how I handled trouble in my family. Someone said something hurtful, someone denied it, everyone talked over one another, and eventually I accepted whatever explanation caused the least damage. This time, I did something different. I called Natalie. An hour later, I was sitting across from her desk with the certified letter, the secure email, and the PDF open on my laptop. She pulled out the real rental agreement my parents had signed. The language was simple. They could not sublease the property. They could not add residents without my written permission. They could not use Cedar Ridge to establish someone else's residency or eligibility. Then Natalie placed the false document beside it. Some of the wording was almost identical, except the meaning had been reversed. The real agreement said my parents could not use the house to prove someone else lived there. The false one made it look as though I had given them permission to do exactly that. Whoever created it had seen the original. Natalie told me not to alter the files, forward them casually, or sign the district response yet. She told me to preserve the envelope, the secure email, and every attachment exactly as I received them. For once, I did not argue with my family. I documented them. Then Natalie asked me one question. Who benefits if the district believes your sister's children live in your property? I looked at Connor and Ava's names. At the time, I thought the answer was simple. We're a better school district. 2 days later, I went to Cedar Ridge because of a leaking faucet and a smoke detector. I left feeling as though I had walked through a stage built to fool someone. 2 days later, I unlocked Cedar Ridge with a new smoke detector in one hand and the plumber waiting behind me. The leak under the kitchen sink was minor. Dad had mentioned it the week before, and I had told him I would meet the plumber there myself. While he worked, I carried the smoke detector toward the stairs. That was when I noticed the breakfast nook. 2 Brookfield backpacks hung from matching hooks. Neatly folded uniform shirts sat in wicker baskets underneath them. Connor's math worksheet had been framed. Ava's spelling test rested beside a medication basket and a weekly calendar. At first glance, it looked exactly like a house where 2 school-age children started every weekday. Then I looked again. The uniforms still had sharp folds from the package. The shoes beneath the bench barely had a mark on them. There was no forgotten water bottle, no broken pencil, no damp coat over a chair, no half-eaten cereal bowl beside the sink. Nothing looked used. Everything looked placed. A house where children live is never this convincing. Adults can arrange a room well enough to fool a photograph. Real life is harder to stage. Children leave crumbs, chargers, toothpaste caps, homework folded into backpacks, and socks in places no one remembers putting them. This room had the evidence of childhood without any of the mess. Mom came in while I was still standing there. She followed my eyes to the backpacks. "Children deserve good schools," she said. I turned toward her. "Do Connor and Ava sleep here Sunday through Thursday?" She did not answer. Instead, she told me I was turning family help into suspicion. Then she added, "You always reduce family to paperwork when feelings become inconvenient." I had heard versions of that sentence my whole life. When Mom did not want to answer a question, she changed the subject until the person asking became the problem. I did not argue. A few minutes later, Cousin Megan arrived to photograph the Christmas decorations for Mom's campaign page. She moved through the dining room with her phone, while Mom directed her toward the tree and mantel. That was when I noticed the second table. The main dining table had already been extended for Christmas. Near the hallway sat a small folding table with 3 narrow chairs. Megan lifted her phone. Mom said, "Don't get too much of that one. It's just overflow." Megan shifted her angle, but not before taking one picture that caught both tables. I barely thought about it then. Before I left, Mom walked me to the door. "Bring Ellie early on Christmas," she said. "But prepare her to respect the seating plan." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. "What seating plan?" Mom gave me a small, patient smile. "Every family has an order." I carried those words with me all the way to the car. Ellie climbed into the passenger seat and waited until I pulled away from Cedar Ridge before she spoke. "Did Grandma put my drawing back up?" I knew which one she meant. The picture she had made after Thanksgiving, with Cedar Ridge under a yellow sun and all of us standing in front of it. "Not yet," I said. She watched the houses pass. Then she asked, "Is she embarrassed because I don't have a dad?" For years, I would have answered the same way. Grandma was old-fashioned. Grandma came from another generation. Grandma needed time. This time, the words would not come. Ellie looked at me. "Does Grandma think I'm fake?" My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "No, there is nothing fake about you." But the truth underneath that answer was harder. Mom had spent years treating the way my family began as if it made Ellie different. Every time I softened Mom's words, I thought I was protecting my daughter. I was not. I was teaching her to question what she already felt. There is a point where keeping the peace stops being kindness. Sometimes it becomes permission. That night, after Ellie was asleep, I opened the district's secure portal. I confirmed that I owned Cedar Ridge. I stated that Jennifer, Connor, and Ava did not live there. And I stated that the signature on the owner authorization was not mine. I read my response twice before sending it. The phone rang 20 minutes later. Jennifer. She did not ask what document I had received. She asked, "What did you tell the district?" That told me enough. We met the next morning at a coffee shop halfway between Ashford and my house. Jennifer kept her coat on, her coffee sat untouched. She admitted Connor and Ava did not sleep at Cedar Ridge most school nights. Dad had prepared the paperwork, the calendar, and the routine. Backpacks and school clothes were supposed to stay there. If anyone asked, the kids were to say they slept at Cedar Ridge Sunday through Thursday. I stared at her. He rehearsed the kids? Jennifer looked down. He said he was keeping their answers consistent. Then she told me her marriage to Matt had been strained for months. Money was tight. They had debt. Mom kept telling her the same thing. "If Matt ever leaves, you'll need us." Jennifer said she had signed one more document, something that let Mom handle school or medical matters if needed. What document? She rubbed her thumb against the paper cup. I don't remember the full name, just 3 letters. She looked at me. POA. I left that coffee shop thinking my parents had lied to get 2 children into a better school district. By the end of the day, Natalie would make me understand that the school might only be the smallest part of the plan. By the time I reached Natalie's office, I had stopped thinking of Cedar Ridge as a family disagreement. I told her everything. The false address. The staged backpacks and uniforms. Dad's overnight calendar. The answers Connor and Ava had been told to give, and the document Jennifer remembered only as a POA. Natalie listened without interrupting. When I finished, she separated the problem into 2 parts. The school district would decide whether Connor and Ava legally qualified to attend Brookfield schools. That was not my decision. Cedar Ridge was different. Mom and Dad were still lawful tenants. "You cannot change the locks," Natalie said. "You cannot put their belongings outside, and you cannot give them 24 hours to leave." I nodded. I had never wanted a scene in the driveway. Natalie had already prepared another option. A voluntary surrender agreement. My parents would have 24 hours to say whether they would accept it. If they refused, Natalie could send the proper termination notice and begin the lawful process of ending the tenancy. Nothing would happen instantly. That mattered to me. I wanted consequences. I did not want revenge dressed up as justice. Then Natalie said something that stayed with me. "You can end a tenancy. You cannot use housing to force your mother to love your daughter." I looked down at my hands. Part of me still wanted Christmas to happen. I still wanted Mom to sit across from me, tell the truth, and somehow make all of this smaller than it had become. "I want to give them one chance," I said. "One chance to tell me the truth before I make this permanent." Natalie studied me. "What exactly would make you stop postponing?" That question was harder than any legal one. We decided on a line I could not move again. If Mom or Dad refused a private conversation, defended the false records, or publicly humiliated Ellie, I would send Natalie one word: proceed. Not because I was angry, because I knew myself well enough to understand that without a clear line, I might keep moving it. That afternoon, Jennifer sent me a screenshot. Dad's calendar was more detailed than I expected. There were false overnight dates, notes about breakfast photographs, reminders to leave medication at Cedar Ridge. School folders had to stay visible. On some days, the children were supposed to wear different clothes, so photographs would appear to come from separate mornings. At the bottom was one reminder: renew POA in February. Natalie explained that a limited parental delegation would not automatically give Mom custody. But paired with months of weekday residence records, medical involvement, school authority, photographs, and overnight logs, it could help Mom claim she had already been acting as a regular caregiver if Jennifer's marriage collapsed. That was when I understood. Mom was not only helping Connor and Ava, she was building a system that made everyone need her. Even Jennifer's favored place in the family came with strings attached. On Christmas afternoon, Ellie stood by our front door holding the box of place cards. "Do I really have to go?" I crouched beside her. "You were invited, but the first time anyone makes you feel like you don't belong, we leave. You do not have to earn your place by staying quiet. Even if Grandma gets mad?" Especially then. 40 minutes later, I walked into Cedar Ridge and saw the folding table near the hallway. I should have taken Ellie home right then, but I still did not know where my mother had placed my daughter's name. The folding table was still near the hallway when Ellie and I stepped inside Cedar Ridge. The house was already full. I had asked Mom for 5 private minutes before dinner, but she answered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Not tonight. Tonight, everybody sees where they belong." I should have turned around. Instead, I looked at Ellie holding the box of place cards she had made that afternoon and told myself we would hand them out and leave. That was the last time I let hope overrule what my daughter had already shown me. Megan gathered everyone for a Christmas photo. Mom smiled. Grandkids next to Grandma and Grandpa. Connor and Ava moved beside her. Ellie stepped forward too. Mom rested a hand on her shoulder and gently guided her toward the folding table. "Stand over there, sweetheart. It balances the picture." Ellie obeyed. When Megan said, "Smile," my daughter smiled. Children sometimes smile in photographs that adults only understand years later. I used to think exclusion had to sound cruel to count. Often, it sounds polite. Tradition. Order. Just for the picture. Don't make a scene. Then dinner was called. Ellie found her place card beside an empty chair at the main table. Mom saw her touch it. She had time to speak. She said nothing. Ellie pulled the chair back and began to sit. Mom crossed the room and yanked it away. Ellie hit the hardwood. Her palm scraped the floor. Her knee struck hard. Silverware rattled against china. Brian laughed. Someone else laughed once, then stopped. Mom dragged the chair beside Connor and Ava. "That seat is for my real grandkids." Ellie looked at me. "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought it was mine." That was the part that hurt most. She thought she had done something wrong. I checked her head, wrists, and knee. Then I looked at the table. Her name was still there. I took out my phone and sent Natalie one word. "Proceed." "You have 24 hours, I told Mom. My phone rang moments later. Natalie said that if my parents refused the voluntary surrender agreement, she could send the formal termination notice the next day. Dad went pale. "Has the district seen the original lease?" That question told me he was not confused. He was afraid. I took Ellie's coat, the place cards, and walked out. For once, I did not ask my daughter to stay so the adults could remain comfortable. I thought the hardest thing that night was watching my daughter hit the floor. I was wrong. The hardest part was the question she asked when we got home. Ellie barely spoke on the drive home. She sat in the back seat, looking out at the dark houses as Christmas lights slid across the window. Every few minutes, I checked her in the mirror. By the time we got home, her right knee had started to swell. The scrape on her palm stung when I cleaned it. I called the pediatric nurse line and described what had happened. The nurse told me what to watch for through the night. Worsening pain, vomiting, unusual sleepiness, confusion, trouble walking. None of those signs appeared. The next morning, her knee was still swollen, so I took her to urgent care. The x-rays showed no fracture. The doctor called it a bruised knee and a superficial abrasion. Rest, ice, and a few quiet days. On the way home, Ellie stared at the bandage on her hand. Grandma didn't mean for me to fall that hard. I went still. For 9 years, I had done the same thing. Mom did not mean it that way. Mom was old-fashioned. Mom needed time. My daughter had learned how to soften someone else's behavior before she had learned how to protect herself from it. That evening, she asked the question I had been dreading. Are Grandma and Grandpa going to lose their house because I sat in the wrong chair? I sat beside her until we were eye level. No, adults sign contracts. Adults make choices. Adults tell the truth or they don't. A 9-year-old sitting in a chair cannot make anyone lose a house. She looked down at her bandaged palm. Then why did you give them 24 hours after I fell? Because what she did to you made me stop postponing something I already knew I had to do. Ellie was quiet. I did not promise Grandma would apologize. I promised something I could control. You will not be put in that position again. Adults worry that children will remember the shouting. Sometimes what stays longer is the moment no one stood up when they were humiliated. I had stood up too late. I was not going to do that again. The next morning, Natalie sent the voluntary surrender agreement. It gave my parents a reasonable move-out date, required them to stop using Cedar Ridge as anyone else's residence, and required them to turn over every document using my name or signature. If they refused, the formal tenancy termination would follow. Mom did not answer Natalie. Instead, she posted in the family group chat that I had planned to throw 2 retired parents into the street on Christmas. Brian agreed with her. I typed 3 replies. I deleted all 3. Natalie called. She wants an argument, she said. Give her a record instead. Then Dad asked for a video call. He said there was something he needed to admit. Dad joined the video call a few minutes after Natalie. Mom did not. Dad said she refused because she would not participate in what she called her own humiliation. I almost laughed at the word. Ellie had been on the floor less than 2 days earlier, apologizing for sitting in a chair with her own name beside it. But I said nothing. Dad adjusted his glasses and began talking before Natalie finished explaining why we were there. He admitted he had prepared the owner authorization. He admitted he had written the false sublease. He admitted he had created the overnight calendar for Connor and Ava. Then I asked the question I needed answered clearly. Did you sign my name? Dad paused. I replicated it so the paperwork wouldn't be delayed. I stared at him. You forged it. His expression tightened. He called it an administrative shortcut. That was when I learned something I should have understood years earlier. A confession and remorse are not the same thing. Someone can admit every action and still believe you have no right to call those actions wrong. Dad was not denying what he had done. He was denying my right to define it. Before the call ended, Natalie told him the records would be preserved and the district would receive accurate ownership information. Dad kept returning to the children. Better schools, stability, family helping family. He talked as though a good outcome could erase a dishonest method. Later that afternoon, Jennifer's attorney sent additional documents. There was a kinship care affidavit. There was a limited parental delegation, giving Mom authority over certain school and routine medical matters. Then there was an email about renewing the arrangement in February. One line changed everything. Mom had written, by February, we'll have 6 months of school mornings, breakfasts, medical appointments, and weekday care on paper. Jennifer read it with me. Her face changed. Matt joined by phone. He admitted he knew they were using the Brookfield address, but he believed it was some kind of school arrangement. He had never understood that paperwork described him and Jennifer as unable to provide consistent weekday care. None of us could pretend innocence anymore. Jennifer knew the address was false. Matt accepted the benefit without asking enough questions. Dad built the paperwork. Mom decided what story the paperwork would tell. Jennifer looked at the email again. She made me look incapable. I understood what she was seeing. Mom's favoritism had never meant Jennifer was safe. It meant her family was useful. She made herself look necessary, I said. That was a real pattern. Mom did not simply help people. She built situations where helping her became difficult to separate from needing her. Jennifer agreed to correct the residency records. For the first time, she stopped defending what our parents had done. Mom did the opposite. Instead of stepping back, she chose the one thing Natalie had warned could make everything worse. She decided to tell her version publicly. Mom went public the next morning. She posted a video on her campaign page from the living room at Cedar Ridge. The campaign banner was still hanging behind her, and she had positioned herself in front of the fireplace like she was giving a statement to voters. She said I was punishing two retired parents over a family disagreement. She said Connor and Ava only sometimes slept over. She said she and Dad had simply helped them get into a safer school. And she kept returning to the same phrase. We were only helping our grandchildren. I watched the first minute with my jaw tight. Then I called Natalie. Don't argue with her, she said. Preserve it. So I did. I screen recorded the page from the top. The date, the account name, the caption, the entire video. Then I scrolled slowly through the comments, so nothing could later be dismissed as something I had misunderstood. Halfway through the video, Mom held up the Christmas photograph. She said it proved Ellie had been included. But the picture showed something else. Connor and Eva were pressed close beside Mom and Dad. Ellie stood several feet away near the hallway, and behind her the folding table was already set. Mom had chosen a photograph meant to defend her. Instead, it showed the arrangement she was denying. An hour later, Megan messaged me privately. She still had the original images from Christmas. One had been taken before dinner, and the timestamp proved it. She sent it to me. I enlarged the picture on my phone. Ellie's place card was beside a chair at the main table. I stared at it for a long time. That did not prove Mom planned for Ellie to fall. I would never claim something the evidence could not support. But it proved the situation was not as simple as Mom was telling people. Ellie had a reason to believe that chair was hers. More important, Mom had watched her reach for it. She had watched her begin to sit. She could have stopped everything with one sentence. She chose not to. By afternoon, the comments under Mom's video had changed. One relative wrote that Ellie had hit the floor and people had laughed. Megan confirmed that the folding table had been set up before dinner. Then one of Mom's campaign volunteers asked a simple question. If this was only babysitting, why had residency documents been necessary? Mom deleted the video a few hours later. It did not matter. Natalie had the recording. The district received the statements that directly related to the residency review. Mom had always believed controlling the story meant controlling the truth. But when someone tells too many versions of the same event, the explanations begin working against them. 2 days later, I received a formal notice from the district. The preliminary review was over. A residency hearing had been scheduled. For the first time, Mom would have to explain herself in a room with no relatives to pressure, no online audience to persuade, and no Christmas table she could control. The hearing took place in a small conference room at the district office. There was no judge, no courtroom, no dramatic entrance. Just a long table, several folders, and people who had finally stopped treating the problem like a family misunderstanding. Natalie sat beside me. Jennifer and Matt were there with their attorney. Mom and Dad sat across from us. The district coordinator began with the lease. I confirmed that my parents were tenants at Cedar Ridge. They were not property representatives. They had never been authorized to create leases for anyone else or use my property to establish another household. Then Natalie showed the owner authorization bearing my signature. Beside it, she placed an old maintenance approval I had signed years earlier. The signatures matched too perfectly. Same shape, same pressure. Same tiny break in one letter. Only the size had been changed. Dad stared at the table. Then came the calendar, the staged breakfast photos, the weekday care affidavit, the notes about clothing changes, and Mom's email about having 6 months of school mornings, medical appointments, breakfasts, and weekday care on paper. The district coordinator turned to Dad. "Did you instruct the children what to say if someone asked where they slept?" Dad shifted in his chair. "I wanted their answers to be consistent." The coordinator waited a second. "Consistent with the truth or consistent with the paperwork?" Dad did not answer. The silence was enough. Mom was the one who finally broke it. Grandparents bend rules for children all the time. Her voice had lost the calm tone she used in campaign videos. Then she looked at me. "You made your choices. We shouldn't have to pretend every kind of family is the same." Everything came together in that sentence. The folding table, the campaign photo, the words "real grandkids." The paperwork that said one set of children belonged inside my house, and the chair that told my daughter she did not. For years I had tried to explain Ellie to my mother as if my daughter were a question that needed a better answer. I was done. I looked at Mom. "You used my house to prove Jennifer's children belonged there. Why did you need a chair to prove mine didn't?" She had no answer I needed anymore. The district later determined that Connor and Ava were not Brookfield residents. The children were not shamed publicly. Jennifer and Matt were given instructions for transferring them and handling the financial consequences through the proper process. After the hearing, the rest happened slowly. One of Mom's campaign co-chairs resigned. A local parent group withdrew its endorsement. Several volunteers stopped helping. No one banned her from running. They simply stopped lending her their credibility. But Cedar Ridge was still unresolved. Mom announced that if I tried to force 2 elderly parents out, she would invite cameras to the house. Natalie called me as soon as she heard. "Don't go there," she said. "She wants one last audience." Mom never got the last audience she wanted. Dad eventually convinced her to sign the surrender agreement. If they stayed past the deadline, the next step could become a public possession case, and that was something neither of them wanted attached to their names. They moved out before the final date. I was not there when the movers arrived. I did not stand in the driveway. I did not change the locks while they watched. The property manager handled the condition report, collected every key, and documented what had been left behind. I did not feel victorious. I felt finished. A week later, Dad sent a letter through Natalie. For the first time, he used plain language. He admitted copying my signature. He admitted creating the calendar. He admitted telling Connor and Ava what answers to give. Then he wrote the part that mattered most. When Ellie fell, his first thought had been about the original lease, not about her knee, not about her hand, the lease. He asked whether taking responsibility might someday earn him another chance to see Ellie. I answered through Natalie, "Accountability may open a door someday. It does not buy access to a child." Jennifer came to our house a few days later. She sat across from Ellie and did not defend herself. I knew Grandma treated Connor and Ava as more important, and I stayed quiet because it benefited my kids. Ellie looked at her. "Do I have to forgive you?" Jennifer shook her head. "No. That was the first apology in my family that did not come with a demand attached to it. Mom never gave one." She sent a card saying, "Blood should matter more than old grievances." There was nothing about the chair, nothing about my signature, nothing about real grandkids. I put the card away. I did not show it to Ellie. 4 months later, Ellie came home with 3 guest tickets for her spring performance. I did not ask whether Grandma should get one. I only asked, "Who do you want there?" She wrote 3 names. Mom, Helen, Denise. She did not hesitate. At the performance, Ellie walked onto the stage and scanned the audience. For a moment, I saw that old caution in her face. Then she found us. Her shoulders relaxed. She stopped looking. That was when I knew something had finally changed. Afterward, we went for pizza. Ellie talked about the songs, the friend who forgot a line, and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Nothing about Cedar Ridge. Nothing about Grandma. When we reached the table, Ellie pulled out a chair and sat down. She did not ask if it was hers. I watched her and remembered every time she had waited for permission. I used to think keeping a family together meant keeping everyone around the same table. I know better now. A full table does not make a family. Blood may explain where we came from, but it does not give anyone the right to make a child prove she deserves love. Family is made by the people who make room for you without making you beg for it. And sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the time you use to watch carefully, keep the evidence, and decide that this time the boundary will not move. If you were in my place, would you have given my parents another chance, or would Christmas night have been the final line for you? And are you satisfied with the way I handled? Tell me what you think in the comments.